Welcome to the Jewish Study Center. I'm Jerry Garfinkel. I'm the treasurer of the Study Center. And as such, I want to tell you that our classes are all free, at least all the Zoom classes. We only charged when we had an in-person class with foods. We had to charge for the food. Um, And even though our classes are free, we do have expenses. So we encourage people to make donations of whatever you feel is appropriate. If you want to donate, go to our website, www.jewishstudycenter.org, and click on donate. And then you can donate from your PayPal account or from your credit card or with a check. If you click on pay by check, it'll tell you the address where to send your check. Um, Everybody should be muted at this point, but we do want your questions and your comments. So write your questions and or your comments in the chat box. Address them to everyone, because sometimes you write a question, someone else will actually answer your question or comment on your question, et cetera, et cetera. After Gaby's presentation is finished, we're going to have a Q&A session managed by Mindy Reiser, who is our vice president. But that'll be after the session, after her presentation is finished. And also, you might notice that the closed comments are on, so you can read things. If you can't understand my accent or someone else's accent, you can actually read what we're saying. I think that's about it. I'm also the technical director, whatever that means. So I'm going to introduce our speaker today. Some of you may have heard me speak to Lucy Steinitz. Lucy is a member of my synagogue, and she's the one who, when she's visiting Quito, discovered another Steinitz family, and that's Gabrielle and her family. So Gabrielle, or Gaby as she calls herself, is an artist. She takes after, to some extent, her grandmother, who was Trudy Suica. And her grandmother was a big artist in Quito. Her grandmother came from the Czech Republic, or in those days, Czechoslovakia. So she was a Holocaust survivor. And then she met her husband, who was also a Holocaust survivor from Germany. They met in Quito. And their house that they built is now a museum. It's called the Trudy Suica House Museum. It's a museum with art of her grandmother and also something of somewhat of Gaby's, but it's also a Holocaust museum. And they've had meetings about the Holocaust, about hate, about how people can relate to each other, etc. So it's a sort of two types of museums: an art museum and also a peace museum. And as I said, Gaby is an artist in her own right. She's gotten a master's degree in France, and she and her mother Anita run the museum in Quito. So I think that's about all I'm going to say about Gaby. So Gaby, I'm going to spotlight you and let you take over.
Okay, thank you very much, Jerry, and thank you, Mindy, and everybody for being here. So I will share my screen. Mm. Okay. So, are you able to see my screen?
Not yet.
No.
It says double click to enter full screen mode. There, now we can.
Okay.
We see you now. We see your screen, and we see you.
Perfect. So yes, my presentation today will be about the connection between Holocaust, art, and nature. So, are they related? So we know the Holocaust has been one of the most dramatic experiences for humanity since the last century. And in fact, it is connected to the current environment problems we are facing today, like pollution, climate change, extractivism. And in fact, they are related also to other problems we even experience today, like hatred, racism, other social issues, and the wars we are living in this world. And so between the Holocaust and the destruction of the natural world, art is a powerful means to transmit ideas, concerns, and even act in one way or another. As we will see, Nazis used art to express their natural ideas or to even manifest pseudo-scientific anti-Semitism. And on the other hand, the Jews, their victims, also got inspired by nature to create their own art in the worst conditions as an act of resistance. So so we will see first of all the Nazi part. So, Holocaust and nature through art. This is how the Nazis viewed nature. This is in fact a painting by Hitler, Adolf Hitler, and he very much admired nature, but in its mystic aspect. So he wanted to he had a double vision that was a little bit contradictory, because on the one hand there was this admiration for the landscapes and the myths surrounding nature, and on the other side he had this idea that we had to dominate nature, and that was the whole like the inspiration behind his horrible thoughts that conducted to the Holocaust, as we know. So in fact, Hitler was not a very good artist. He copied postcards and other paintings he saw, and he never developed his artistic career, but he did very much admire other artists, and he thought that culture and art would have to be the basis of his ideology and of the whole Third Reich mentality, as well as other anti-Semites in his regime. But on the other side, the scientific pseudo-scientific reflections on the Jews, and they had to be the species that dominates over the others. So these were the two main aspects of this government: art, and at the same time science, pseudoscience, with admiration for nature. So one of his favorite artists was Adolf Ziegler, and he in fact was a head of one of the exhibitions we will see of the great German art, and he painted this idealistic ideas of how people should be related to nature, that the society had to return to the natural environments, to the fields and work there, and go back to our ancestors, and all these ideas that are actually very one can think they're very actual. Today the ecologists are always talking about that, but as I said, it's contradictory, because at the same time this nature had to be dominated. Everything had to be really controlled, and we can see on the other side this other painting from Adolf Wiesel, and it's the ideal Aryan family. They had to have many children, so for them nature was also that they had to nature was for them about always in a battle, always in a war, and very violent, and we had to follow those principles. I mean, they had to follow those principles, and women had to had as many children as they could in order to reproduce the race, and it had to be, as I said, uh, 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 everything control on that side, and on the other side, the Jews were the germs, so they had to be out of the world, and they had to be the species that is dominated and eradicated, just as a virus, as this germ theory that we had to eliminate all the viruses and bacteria. They thought in society it had to be the same. So they expressed always these concepts through art, and this was Arno Brecker was Hitler's favorite sculptor. And here's him painting the bust of the Minister of Armaments as the ideal Aryan. So again, this idea that the superior race had to predominate in nature and even be more important than other natural aspects of the world, like over trees, over mountains, had to be over everything. And this was also expressed in their architecture. And here's a sculpture by Josef Thorax, who was also a Nazi, very important sculptor. And yes, always this idea of everything had to be like symmetric, had to be geometric, and going back to the Roman roots of the art. So in 1937, the Hitler regime, the Third Reich, created this exhibition, and that was held in Berlin and München, and it was a compilation both of modern artists that in fact were very academic. So as you could see, very academic sculptures and paintings, landscapes, or very figurative paintings and sculptures. And it was presented as if it was very, very like grandiose, very it had to be majestic, and people entering this exhibition were seeing these huge halls, and they had to be impressed by the artworks. It had to be something that convinced them that this is the ideal, this is what we have to follow. And on the other side, during the same year, the Nazis, in fact, Adolf Ziegler was as I told you, the person in charge of making this other exhibition of degenerate art, presenting many Jewish artists and many non-Jews, but who were following the vanguard, the the modern art that was more free, that was expressing nature as feelings, as abstract art. And also many artists in this time were interested in the cultures of other continents than Europe and than the North, like African art, Latin American art, Asian art, that they called primitive arts at the time. But they were interested in how they represented nature and how we should go back to nature in another way of thinking than the Nazis. So the Nazis wanted to show that these were artists that had no value at all, and they exhibited these artworks in a very different way than the Great German Art Exhibition. Like we can see in the picture, it was everything, one painting over another, no space, many sculptures in the floor, even letters everywhere, even Nazi propaganda among that, very titles that were despective, that talked negatively about this art. And yes, of course, as I said, many Jews had their artworks exhibited there. And after the exhibition, they were burnt. So I, well, as Jerry told you, my grandmother actually was in Germany at that time, and she was an artist as well. She studied there. I can imagine that maybe one of her arts could have been burnt, or even, I don't know, it could have been exhibited in one of these in this exhibition. So yes, this is the other side of their art. So at the same time, in contraposition of their majestic sculptures and paintings, there was all this propaganda art that compared the Jews to very negative aspects of nature. Like here in this famous book that was distributed to children during the Third Reich, to the Aryan children. This book compared, as you can see, the Jews to toadstools. So yeah, and in this book is illustrated, and you can see the negative, how they show negatively the Jews here. And then, of course, the Nazi propaganda that the posters that were hanged all over the walls in Germany, depicting this is Churchill dominating the world. So this is how contradictory it is. So the Nazis thought, no, we have to dominate the world before Churchill, who's actually only a marionette of the Jews. That's why there's the Star of David over him. Before he dominates the world, we have to win, and we have to be the ones who dominate the world, the natural world. And always these metaphors with nature. Okay, and on the other side, the Jewish art. So a little bit of background, maybe. In Jewish tradition, it's not very common to depict things like in Catholic art, like depict persons, because of course God forbid to represent images, but art was always present, as we can see in the synagogues, and the natural patterns were always present as well. Of course, the Star of David is the symbol by excellence of this natural part of the world, and a star is natural, right? And how it protects us, and at the same time we are protected by it. I mean, we should protect it. We should protect the symbol, and it protects us as well, and it illuminates us. So there was this beautiful game with the natural sun in this particular dome of a synagogue, and in other synagogues we can see that as well, that emit light through this star, and we can see other patterns, other natural patterns as well in the traditional art. And during the Holocaust, of course, the world was different. Not all Jews that were prisoners were religious, and many were artists. So I will focus particularly on a concentration camp and a ghetto, the Theresienstadt in the Czech Republic. And actually my grandmother's sister and mother were there. And in this camp, the Nazis encouraged art because many artists went there. And they used this art sometimes as as means of propaganda to show the world that they were treating the Jews very well, and that they had the opportunity to make art, and look how they are free to make whatever they wanted to. Of course, this was not true. But on the other hand, the Jews were actually using what they could. They were using the paints that they could get anywhere, even the watercolors that they sometimes bought inside the camp, and they depicted nature as a metaphor of their own feelings. So in this case, here's a watercolor by Kaufman. His sermon name is Caras, and here he depicted these dead trees in the early spring, but as if they were prisoners of this camp, and they were looking for freedom. They were just as people, right, without leaves, without much life, but they were hoping that one day they they could be green again. And children were also able to make some drawings and paintings, and they were encouraged by the own prisoners of Terezin. And one of the patterns that was repeated one of the images that was depicted in in many of the paintings of the children was the butterfly, because the butterfly was a symbol of reincarnation, we can say, in another better life. The butterfly metamorphosis, and also the symbol of hope. um, and so many poems were made there, of course, another form of art, and music as well. And they expressed the very deep feelings of wanted to get out of these horrible places. So here and the woods as well. Here are two paintings by children. Actually, woods, these natural parts of the Nazi, well, the war, let's say, were very important both for Nazis and for the Jews, because on the one hand, Jews could hide in the woods, so they protected them. The partisans and the resistance, and on the other side, the Nazis exploited the forests in order to make to burn them, to conduct the trains, in the railways. And the Nazis actually made a swastika in I think it was in Berlin, near Berlin in Germany. They made a swastika out of trees, like it was land art, something like that. And it was only discovered in the 1990s that they made this swastika. And because we could always see it over the skies if you took a plane or a helicopter. So yeah. And then one very symbolic tree, very present in a work of art, that is the Diary of Anne Frank, a work of literature, was the chestnut tree. So Anne Frank was inspired by the tree she saw in the window when she was hiding in this room, before she was taken to the concentration camps. And this tree was always present in her diary. She always spoke very in his journal. Sorry, uh, she always spoke poetically about it. And many illustrations. These are made after the war, of course, in a recent time. Uh, Depicted this tree because it was very important. The tree is actually no more. It was destroyed during a storm, but the seedlings are all over the world, and there are many, I know, in the United States and in other parts of the world. So what happened after the war? So art was not stopped, even if there's a famous quote by Adorno, Theodor Adorno. He wrote that after Auschwitz, no more art was possible. But of course, it was misinterpreted. What he wanted to say, in fact, was that he thought that art would be completely transformed, and that what we called art before the war could no longer perhaps be called art after the war, and the new art had to be something completely different. And in fact, it was changed. It was both the natural world and the artistic world were changed after the war. So uh, I really like this poet, who is called Paul Celan, and he was actually a Holocaust survivor. He was from Romania, and he wrote this compilation of poems that is called the No One's Rose. And it was very symbolic because it's his way of seeing the Holocaust in a very really after the war. He started writing right away, and even he wrote in German, so the language of the enemies, and he did that on purpose. And then he even showed his poems to Nazi authorities that were now in charge of the Eastern Soviet regime in Germany, you know, and of course he was rejected, but it was very brave of him to make these poems, and it's very symbolic because he uses the rose as a metaphor of the of like he's comparing the passion of Christ and what happened to the Jews during the Holocaust, because for him, of course, Christ was a Jew, and for him it was even a worse crime that happened uh, during the Holocaust, and the rose is a way of also thinking about God. It's in fact, it's very complicated to explain his poems. They are very encrypted, but I love them because there's such bravery, and always the natural word is present there. And then I want to show you other artists on the other side. Uh, this is a German artist. He was appointed by the Wehrmacht, by the German army during the war, to go to the Soviet side to fight and against the Allies. And he was raised during the Hitler youth's programs, and but he was not a convinced Nazi or anything. He was just was just raised in this ideology. He believed it, but according to him, we don't know if it's true or not. During one of the flights, when he was sent to the war, the plane when he was where he was fell, and he was rescued by a group of Russian shamans in the middle of nowhere, and they saved his life. And his mentality changed after that episode. And so after the war, he became an artist, and he decided to make his art as a way of making shamanism. So for him, actually, life was art, and he was one of the precursors of performance, of the performance style, like the movement, yeah, the performance movement. And he also made many installations that were very symbolic, because he wanted to heal himself and to heal his people by art with connected with nature. So actually, I want to read a quote, a brief quote, that Joseph Beuys connected deeply with how a shaman figure could encourage healing, regeneration, and transformation. These themes were particularly potent to Beuys in the wake of World War II, when a deeply wounded society needed to heal and mend itself. He integrated these healing aspects of shamanism into many of his most profound works of art, which opened up room for spiritual contemplation and conveyed a message of hope and optimism for a new world. One of his I wouldn't say main artworks, but one of his most important artworks was the end of the 20th century. This was made in 1983-85, and it was how he saw as a symbolism of healing the war wounds. So he took these basalt rocks, and he drilled them as a symbol of what had happened during the war, because for him the whole face of the world was drilled by the Nazi missiles in a symbolic way, and he covered them with clay and felt, because clay was the roots of it's, you know, in all mythologies and all religions, maybe not all, but many of them, we are made out of clay, and we will become clay. So it was a way to going back to our roots, but at the same time, felt is this clothing, is this way of keeping us warm. So he covered them with felt as well, because it needed to be protected, and we needed to cover these wounds with these materials in order to heal. So it's very, it's symbolic. It's a metaphor. There's another artist who has this controversial past, because he was the son of a Nazi, of an SS, and he was born in 1945, so, or 44, just at the end of the war. Of course, he knew nothing about it when he was little, but when he grew up, he felt so compromised to make something, as well as Joseph Beuys, to heal the society, to heal the German society, and um, to give to pay tribute to the Jews that died there, and to the Jews that still survive after the war. So his art is monumental. I've seen his paintings are huge, and his installations are well as well, and they're made with natural materials, many of them, um, and um, and also depict not the natural world wounded by the war. And he also he also references to Paul Celan's poems. He's very inspired by this No One's Rose compilation I told about. One of his installations that I love is the Secret of the Ferns, and it is an herbarium. In fact, is a post-apocalyptic apocalyptic herbarium, and what he wants to do here is compare the Second World War, with the situation we are going to live, or we are already living through, because of climate change, and because of all the destruction of nature. So this is like a bunker. It depicts something like a Nazi bunker, but it's actually also depicting the constructions made with cement and concrete all over the world, that are in a maybe a future scenario, broken, used by time, and full of of coal. What you can see on the in the floor, and inside these bunkers is a skull that depicts how humanity has been in this time distracted by that. And also, Nazis were one of the precursors of the industrialist world, using many fossil fuels, of course, for their planes and for the war, etc., and for the concentration camps as well. And around these bunkers, we can see like a little, well, not that little, but some paintings that are that contain objects that remember, that are a remembrance of the human beings that will disappear, but also that make reference to what sometimes we can see in museums of the Holocaust, like clothing and objects that have been collected there to remember these human beings. And all of them contain ferns, because fern is what fossil fuels are originally made of. After millions of years, ferns were turned into oil, into petroleum, and also it's one of the most resistant plants in the world, and it's believed they will resist more than any other plants after the climate has completely changed, and global warming has destructed many species. So we can see this is a clear parallelism between the Holocaust and the slow violence of extinction. And so Anton Kiefer asks, what does it mean to mourn something while it is still alive? Mourning has to do with agreeing to undergo a transformation. The installation actually holds the viewer suspended between memory and presence. And to Kiefer, art can refresh our perception, defamiliarize that which has become mundane or invisible as a theater of memory. Another important artist that unites Holocaust nature and of course in his art is Ari Gallas. He was born in 1944, and he is Jewish. His parents escaped the Holocaust, and he lived between many countries, moving from one to another, like all the Jews after the war, looking for the best place to live, while anti-Semitism was still all over the world. And he was impacted by the visions of the concentration camps he saw after the war, because when he was a kid, his parents went to see friends or families in displaced camps, and also in concentration camps. They went to see them, and he saw these camps right after they were liberated, and he was deeply touched by them. So when he became an artist, he's based in the United States. He made these landscapes, as we can see here. He took photographs of aerial photographs that were taken of the camps right after the war, and he painted them with he drew them with charcoal, and around these paintings he framed them with barbed wires. These are compacted barbed wires, and he assigned a poem to each of the camps. So he made a series of 14 concentration camps, each one with his poem, with its poem. And they are, as you can see in the other, you could see in the other pictures, they are very big. And what it means is how the landscape, how the natural world was scarred by the war, by the camps. And he's now studying in other paintings how the world is also being scarred and touched by all the human actions that are destroying it and destroying the landscape. So another artist, more contemporary, is Giselle Beigelman. She lives in Brazil. She's also Jewish, and she's also an architect, but well, she's mostly an artist. And I got to know her last year in a presentation of Jewish museums, because she had an exhibition in the Jewish Museum of Sao Paulo. That was called Botanica Tiránica. So what happened to her is that one day somebody told her about a plant that is called the wandering Jew, and she thought it was an insult to her. And the plant exists even in Ecuador, in Latin America. It's very common, and she started with that name, exploring other plants that were given anti-Semitic names, and also very racist names. In the context where she lives in Brazil, there are many African American people and Indian people, and they all get insulted, let's say, by the denomination of like the title European scientists gave to mundane plants, because usually these plants are considered weeds. So or consider that that are not important to feed us, etc. But sometimes some of these plants are very important for indigenous peoples or for some cultures. So, for example, the wandering Jew, in fact, is a very healing plant that is used for menstrual pains and for stomach aches. So what she wanted to do through this exhibition is to show how through the name we can transform these racist, these nomenclatures given by the colonialists, and maybe give them their value as well. And also she made she gave names to the artificial intelligence, also racist names, to see what happened. And the artificial intelligence understood that, and many times gave very similar plants that already exist in the world. So she also wants to warn us about the dangers of nourishing the IA, the artificial intelligence, with these with the anti-Semitic or racist names and racist news and everything that circulates in the internet. So finally, almost finally, I want to present another artist, and that is my grandmother, so Trude Soika. Um, she was born in 1909, and she did live the war. She was Jewish. She lived in Czechoslovakia, although she was born in Berlin. And yeah, here are some pictures of her family and her, and of Prague, the city she most loved. As I told you before, she studied arts in the 1930s, and she was very much inspired by the expressionist artists. Many of them were considered degenerate. And she married in another Jew. They went to live in Slovakia in 1942, and then in 1944 they were deported to several concentration camps, and she was pregnant during that time, and she lost her husband. She gave birth in one of the camps in Gross Rosen. In fact, that's why I don't know if you noticed, but in the painting by Ari Galles, I put the concentration camp I put there as Gross Rosen. And she she suffered a lot, of course. During those times, she lost all of her family, but she found out her brother was in Ecuador. He could flee in time and come to this country, and she decided to join him, and that's how she came to Ecuador. And then in Ecuador, already established, that decided to dedicate her whole life to her art. And this is some of her art. She worked until she was 97 years old, and the year she died. She lived a very long life, and she was very prolific. She, through the Soika, was always inspired by nature to depict her feelings and her experiences, both in Europe and in Ecuador, as metaphors. For example, here we can see the boat, the ship, and this is also, it looks a little bit like a flame as well, a purifying flame, and it's a depiction of how she came to Ecuador, and that trip was like the fire of purification, that started her new life in this country. Or the elephant, that is the symbol of strength, of memory as well. And here other artworks she made. Oops, sorry. This is one of the most symbolic ones, the phoenix bird, because her name, her last name in Czech means a bird. It's a jay. It's the word for jay. So she saw herself in many of her paintings as a bird. It was a metaphor of liberation, of freedom, of being able to also to see the world like in perspective, like a bird does. And uh, this bird is reborn from the ashes after this purifying fire, the boat. She is reborn in this country, and one very interesting aspect of her artworks is that she used recycled materials. So one could say, oh, it's because maybe she was already concerned by the environment, and somehow she was, uh, but in a different way that maybe we could think about today, because for her every material was important. She didn't want to throw anything away after all she experienced, everything she didn't have during the Holocaust, everything she lost. So everything was valuable for her, and was she didn't like uh she didn't like the concept of garbage we have now. Um, for her, garbage didn't exist. This was a problem in the family because she accumulated many objects, and her husband and then her children didn't like that. But afterwards, she collected uh, many of these objects, and she made beautiful sculptures and paintings out of them with cement. As we can see, it was like the glue, and the phoenix bird is made over a trash can lid. So she recycled everything she could, and now we could also think she was doing a good thing for the environment. um, and on the other side, she also admired the Ecuadorian cultures. She studied them and studied their relation with nature, that is very profound, and how they viewed the the world as a whole, like the nature and us are connected in all the ways. We are nature, we are part of nature. And she depicted in her artworks many indigenous like spiritual like yeah the spiritual many spiritual symbols, like here the dancer, the rain dancer, also made with recycled materials. I think it's a door or something like that, there with the buttons of a shirt. So uh, and also she was inspired by the petroglyphs and the natural art we can find in the Amazon especially, but all over Ecuador and all over Latin America. Of course, a bird again, as a symbol of the through the Soika new life, through Soika's new life. It's a pelican here, and her her vision of nature was also was I mean, she also admired the scientific world, and the new discoveries at that time, for example, about the cosmos, and that made her meditate about her own life, about the the infinity, and what will we become, and when we where we come from, and compare her experience during the Holocaust with the vacuum of the universe, and what sense does it make, life, what does it mean compared to the universe and the destructions, and also the how it protects us. So this is the cosmos, and then the spirit of the forest and the wood, uh, that are very symbolic of how she saw nature as a protector, even during those difficult times. And so, what happened 3 generations later? It's this is me. This is myself. My grandmother let me in her studio, and I ruined some of her artwork. No, she let me paint some of her artworks, in fact, and I was inspired by her, by her but what she made, and I became also an artist. I studied in France, and I went to the Czech Republic and to Germany, and I was also very much touched about this my past. My grandparents were both Holocaust survivors, and I decided to make a career out of this impact, of the imprints of the Holocaust over myself and over um, my family, and I also was inspired by the natural world. So these are one of my first artworks. It's a reflection over the floor, in a rainy floor, in a cold day, of memories of my grandmother, with her passport and other Holocaust survivors and symbols of the Holocaust, and they are all like blurred by the rain. So it's like how memory works. And I was also inspired by Paul Celan, his poetry, and I made a performance with it. I wrote the verses of one of his poems, that is called Psalm, and I wrote them over rose petals. And then I was in France, and France, in the part of France where I was, Bretagne, was also impacted by the war. Many Nazis made bunkers there, and it was also bombarded by the Allies, and many people died because of both sides. So I decided to make a tribute to all those victims by burying these petals in different symbolic places, uh, in Bretagne. So, for example, I buried this under a rose that was planted very near a bunker in Quimper. This is yeah, in one of the cities I was in Bretagne, and yeah, of course, because the compilation is called No One's Rose. That's what I made over rose petals, in and they were there were many of them buried in, yeah, many symbolic places. And then this is a series of sculptures I made, the rooted hands, I call them, because these hands are at the same time broken. It's I wanted to depict the hands of victims of the Holocaust and what they were doing at those times. I wanted to imagine what they could have been doing, like resisting in the ghettos or in the uprisals, or sometimes they were just looking for help, or just saying, "I'm here, help me, or I want to survive." So I think that for many of them, it was very important to their own identity, right? To be a Jew was very important, and that made some of them survive, because they had very deeply rooted the fact that they um if they wanted to the Nazis wanted to annihilate the Jews, because they were Jews, they had to survive, something like that. And so I depicted these rooted hands, rooted in their identities, and they also could look a little bit like trees. And this is one of an artwork that is exhibited in the museum, in the museum of my grandmother here in Ecuador. That is the tree of life that was destructed at one time, but it's being reconstructed, and it's also an allusion to the the beginning of the world, according to the Jewish Kabbalistic view, maybe, like the broken glass, that, and from this broken glass the world was created. And then I think these glasses have been broken several times. The Holocaust was one of the worst episodes where these glasses were broken and these mirrors were broken. And so, but it's possible to reconstruct, to rebuild our lives, and through the metaphor of the tree. And it's on the one side it's all black and white, and on the other side I colored it. So this is the exhibition I made, inspired by Paul Celan's poem. I also made some roots, depicted some roots, some tree barks, and well, yeah, for me it's the imprints that the Holocaust left on us are like the imprints that maybe we can find in trees, and we can connect with them. I think we are, if we can like compare with the trees, our lives, and as a society with a forest, maybe we can maybe learn many lessons, and think, reflect more about who we are, how do we want to live. And yeah, so lately I've been doing what I could call more performances and more live as art, we could say. I'm taking one of an indigenous concept of Ecuador, that is the Minga. It's like a community work where everyone gathers to make something together. And so I invited other people to invade the streets of Quito and plant trees there, native trees, and to associate a person's memory to each one of the trees and the plants we planted. So they have their one of them, for example, is in honor of my aunt that died during the Holocaust, my grandmother's baby who died in the Holocaust. So yeah, this is our other symbols. And yeah, so now just to finish, I want to say just that I'm working also in a museum, the Through the Soica House Museum, that is both a Holocaust memorial, also an art museum where my grandmother's art is exhibited there. This is actually a sculpture by my grandmother called the Golem, who's protecting us in the garden. And we are also doing a lot of work in favor of the environment. We think that it's so important that after that after the Holocaust left us so many scars, we have to be able to mitigate them and to go back to our roots, to also be more environmentally friendly, and yeah, to just like start a new era that is healing and not destructive. So yeah, I don't know what my last slide. Okay, so just to finish, this is a painting by my grandmother, the woman in blue, and it's like the symbol of freedom, the symbol of peace, and of a new life. And so I think that I want to invite you at the end of this speech that that we all think about what are our roots, and how all the wars and all the Holocaust especially has affected us until today, and to see art as a means of reflecting about it, and of healing, and also of reconnecting with memory and nature. And I think that will help us also face better the challenges of our modern society, and also invite you to make your own art, to heal your own internal wars, because we all have them. We all have these internal traumas, and I think that healing ourselves is part of healing nature as well. So yeah, thank you very much. I'm open to questions.
Okay, Gaby, that was extraordinary. I can't tell you how much we've learned. But first, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, great. Okay, I want to use some of the questions we had in our chat, but also ask some of my own. One of our first questions is the art of Jewish people that was collected and exhibited by the Nazis and other art they had as well. How did they get some of these works of art?
The ones they exhibited at the Great German Exhibition, you mean?
Yes.
Well, many of them were stolen. The like Greek art and Roman art were stolen from museums in places they invaded, and yeah, of course, many artists that were working at that time also lended some of their art to be exhibited there. Yeah, so and there's a huge topic about the artworks spoilage, we could say. So yeah, they stole many art.
Okay. I'm going to ask you a question about this art and the extraordinary art made by Jews with reflections on the Holocaust using different media. Okay, in terms of the degenerate art, horrible as it was there any kind of catalog the Nazis kept so they could show it and how horrible Jewish art was?
Yeah, in fact, the Jews wanted to make a museum of the Jewish people when they would be able to kill all of them. They
Mhm.
wanted to like keep the memory of the Jews, just to say like, look what we destructed, look what we did. That's wonderful, something like that. So yeah, but the the Nazis did I think they did do a catalog of the degenerate art,
See?
but they were more interested, I think, in preserving some items of the Jewish culture for the future to tell what they did. More than
Okay.
the art.
Yeah, you mentioned some chilling material that there was a children's book focusing on the horror that was Jews. I want to know what the schools of art in Germany were doing during this time. Were they focusing on the idyllic world of nature and flowers? Did they also include examples of the caricatures of Jews? Do you know anything about that?
Yes, in fact, well, until I think almost the beginning of the war, until the the worst anti-Semitic laws started. So yeah, I would say 1938, 39. The schools were actually functioning quite normally. My grandmother was able to study still until I don't know exactly into what year, but maybe 33, maybe 34. um and there were still the the vanguardists, how to say it, the avant-gardes, um movement was still on, and with many artists uh that promoted abstract art and things like that were still teaching. But I think, yeah, after that, the Nazi regime became much more uh, mm, um, hard on things, and of course, art schools were completely changed to be more academic. So one had to represent the world as it is, like very figurative things, and not anymore express anything other than the Nazi ideology. So yeah, until the end of the war, and yeah, he wanted to be an artist
Hmm.
when he was young. Of course, he promoted his own vision of the art, a very propagandistic and everything. And I don't know if they were using in the fine art school the propaganda posters. It was, I think it's rather in the applied arts and the graphical arts that we're using more of them, because they also made this distinction between the fine arts and the more applied arts, the graphic arts illustration, things like that, and other things are fine arts, like the fine painting, the fine sculptures, the music as well. Yeah.
Okay, I just want to ask one more, well, two more questions. In terms of contemporary German art, you've done a wonderful collection of art by Jewish artists who have ended up in different parts of the world because of migration. What have, if at all, but there must be, what have German artists done with the times of the Holocaust? What kinds of depictions have they made about these various horrors?
You mean about the art that was produced during the Holocaust?
No, now, looking back, just as the Jewish artists have done.
How Germans today
Yes.
are doing art? Well, I think much of the Nazi art was destroyed, or hidden. In fact, I think many items are still being art made by Nazis are being sold all over the world at very high prices, or even in the black markets. And there's actually many falsifications, you can say, of Hitler's art that are being sold. So yeah, it's I don't really know what, but the official art, many public monuments and things like that were destroyed, and the much of the Jewish art and the degenerate art was, of course, destroyed, but some of the um, of the art dwellers, I think we could say, at dealers, art dealers at the time, did rescue many of the artworks, um, and they brought it to America, or they hid them somewhere to save these artworks. So today, I think there some of them are there's some artworks are being given back to the owners. Like, for example, Klimt was also considered, he was not a Jew, but he was considered a degenerate artist, and his art was um, uh, was given back to his owners, who were Jews. So of course, there's also a question about the Jewish art that they were collecting at the time, that was also sometimes saved by people all over the world. So today, yeah, museums are trying to still organize these things.
Okay, your cousin who is here from Zimbabwe asks a very pointed question. We saw art as trying to counter what was going on in the camps by some artists, and the metaphors, Jewish artists, the metaphors they used. So Lucy wants to put this in a contemporary context also. All right, so we've seen all kinds of manifestations and uses of art as protest in our contemporary world. So, do you want to talk a little bit about framing what you saw among Jewish artists, but also contemporary artists who are protesting against current developments and seeing their work as an affirmation of another world and as a rejection of what they're seeing that they see as hostile and oppressive?
In the contemporary art world, um, well, now there is much more conceptual art, so we have yeah, of course, there are very there are many activist artists, and actually I have been studying the art of uh, of of artists that are ecologists, and but they also somehow have to address the questions the of wars and violence in the world. And for example, there's an artist, I don't remember the name right now, but I think he's French, and he's planting a whole we could say a forest of bad weeds. And it's like it's a protest, like to say we have to kind of similar to what happened to what Giselle Biegelman that I talked about did, but this artist is really planting these weeds everywhere, and it is also a metaphor of the bad weeds. It's the people that some want to exterminate. And so I think we're seeing many parallels with what happened also during the Second World War. Uh, Many artists that are victims of wars, like in Ukraine, want to express themselves and want to express their feelings. So I think that's the in the contemporary, but of course there's also the protest. I I don't know much what's going on in the purely activist world of against the current wars in contemporary art, but I know, yes, many museums are showing yes artworks that have been made before, but that still talk about what happens today. And yeah, and like taking using memory is a very important tool to protest against what's happening. Yes. I don't know if
Gaby,
I answered
we
your
could go on really for another 2 hours. But let me ask you quickly, how did you manage to collect the artworks by Jewish artists that you did?
Well, the ones I presented are artists that I have admired. There are many more, but I as artists that I have studied as well. So the artworks there are actually pictures from the internet, but I have studied them, and as I told you, for example, Giselle Biegelman, I met in a conference. I have seen conferences by Ariel Ari Gales and Anselm Kiefer and Joseph Beuys. I have seen in museums in France, and I really admire their work. So I thought it was really interesting to show them.
Okay, I guess we all have to go to Quito and see for ourselves what you've done. Do you have speakers come to the museum, the House Museum, and talk about their experiences, what they were trying to do in their artwork?
Um, we lately we haven't had many. We're now more focusing on the permanent exhibition, so the art of my grandmother, rather, and also a bit more of my own art. But in the past, yes, there have been artists talking about. I think it's more poems, poetry. I think that there was an exhibition of a poet. Um, my mom knows more. I'm sorry, but yeah, we have had presentations. There's a Jewish artist in Ecuador, a contemporary artist, Sarah Reutmann, and she has talked here, and also she makes exhibitions all over Ecuador about memory, and she also made a cinema festival linking the Holocaust to the contemporary world. So yes, we are always interested also in making events around those those things.
Okay, you must do a catalog of what you told us. Are you doing that? Will you do that?
Not exactly, but it's a good idea.
All right, because we're going to have many more people that were on this call now, this Zoom now, and we are recording it, so many more people will see it. But if you did a catalog, I think that would be really great. What kind of response have you gotten from Ecuadorians themselves or people of different heritage to what you're showing in the museum?
Well, in fact, many Ecuadorians are surprised because they don't know how the Holocaust and and the art we're showing here, and yes, so that is linked to their own history, and it is very much linked because many Jewish migrants came to Ecuador, like my grandparents, and Ecuador is um, also it is how it is because of Jews that came here and developed many fields. Um, and also Nazis were here in Ecuador, so they're like discovering, because I think the nice thing about I don't know, maybe showing this art and also speaking to people directly, and not only letting them see the artworks and then go away, but actually having a dialogue with the visitors that come to the museum, is that we can talk more about the context of the artworks, and not only they tell, oh, that's beautiful, okay, then let's go to the other one, oh, that's interesting, but we can hear them, and we can also sometimes we have received anti-Semitic responses, or something that sounds like anti-Semitic, because people don't know the reality, and they say, but how could you show all that if Auschwitz never existed? How can you do all this work if nothing happened? Are you're exaggerating, or things like that? We receive both very, very nice responses that people are, wow, really, I want to know more about it, and people that say, oh, I don't understand anything. Yes.
All right, Gabby, say a little bit more, and I want to encourage people to put Quito in their travel plans. How does the museum organize itself? Is it open every day? Do you have a place where people could buy a book or books about art and protest or art in the Nazi period? Do you have things people can take away with them from the museum?
Well, the museum is open to the public with reservation. So it's not like a normal museum that is open all every day from 1 hour to another hour, because we live here and it's still our house. So it's like we're opening it if people wants to come. So yeah, the main thing is the guided visits that, and after the visit, I think that one of the most enriching things that they get from the museum is the dialogue, as I said, as the learning many things, and also the possibility that they can also express themselves. But we do have a library. We have a family library. People can come and check the books, but not to take away. And we do have we do sell some books. Very few of them. We are still developing that part, because it's a little bit difficult to get books in Ecuador. It's, well, the policies, things like that. But we sell a book by Trude Soika, her art, and some books by friends that have written, for example, poetry around protest. I have also a book myself. It's for children.
Oh.
And also my mom published a book that is philosophic, and also show her artworks, because my mom is also an artist. We're a family of artists. And we sell that most of yes, it's a very small library.
So you are now speaking from the House Museum, is that right?
Yes,
You're
yes, I'm here.
sitting right here in the library, right?
Yeah, exactly, so you
Oh,
can see it
that's
behind me.
that's incredible. Well, look, I want to see if Jerry has any questions. And Lucy, you're there. I think you're there in Zimbabwe. Do you want to have anything to amplify or to ask questions of your cousin? There she is, if you can see her, Lucy. No? I don't know if she's talking or not. Okay, well, I'm
You're
sure
muted, Lucy.
Yeah. You already asked my question. Thank you so much. But I'm just incredibly proud of my distant cousin. And this was absolutely amazing. But it's not just me saying this, Gabi. It's when you look at the chat afterwards, you'll just smile from ear to ear. You've worked really, really hard in your life, in your short life still, pulling so many strands together and teaching us all so much. Thank you.
Absolutely, Gaby. Do you go? I know you want people to come to see you, but do you go to any of the schools, not only in Quito, but across Ecuador? And what about a class at the university? How are you making this incredible richness available to others who can't come to the museum because they're in distant parts of Ecuador?
Yes, so we're working on it. We have made virtual tours.
Yeah.
Our technology system for that is not the best, so we're still working on it. But we do want to. We have many schools coming to the museum, and it's a small museum, and of course the other impediment is that it's not very big. It's a house, a family house, so not many people can no more than maybe 20-30 maximum people can be in one room altogether. So yes, we have also workshops that we make in schools. We
Ah.
go to schools and I talk about my grandmother. I give speeches about that, depending on the subject, because also what they are interested in, sometimes more the Holocaust, or sometimes they're more interested in the art. We also make many workshops. For example, we did a workshop with the high school students, and we brought some of the art of Trudesoika to the school, and then they had to make their own art, and then they were explaining all of that to other schools. So yeah, many activities like that. And also we work with other museums to make to present our work also in other these other museums, and we have so we can have a broader public. Yeah.
Wait a second here. Museums outside of Ecuador, you're able to do that? To send, well, you can do it via Zoom, as you sort of said, but what about physically bringing some of the objects to other countries?
We did it once. We send the artworks, not all of some of artworks to Prague, and
Ah,
there was an exhibit there in Terezin, in the concentration camp and ghetto. There it was really interesting. Of course, it's very it's a lot of work of
yes.
logistics and things like that, and we have to prepare it with a lot of time. But yeah, we did that, and we were planning to do something similar with Gross Rosen, but with printed artworks. So they can make copies of the artworks through the Soika, or other artworks in the museum, and yeah, so we were planning that. And also I'm uh I'm traveling. I've been traveling lately, and I'm still going to travel to some places to talk about that. And then my next station is Bogota, in Latin America, to talk about these things.
All right, look, let us know where you're going because our recordings really travel all over the world, and it would be good to notify people so you can send us to Jerry and to me your itinerary. Okay, where you're going.
Sure.
And let me now turn to Jerry, who I'm sure has questions of his own, and then we can get some last words from you if you still have energy after talking for an hour and a half. Jerry?
Yes, just a second. It's fine. Okay. Okay. I don't have any questions really. I just have some comments. Um, as Lucy said, you did a great job describing things. But what I particularly liked was all the artwork in the PowerPoint that you showed. I mean, it was amazing stuff that you showed. Um, so that, I really liked it. Put it that way. Um, and this is the second class we've had from the House Museum. We had a class about, I think, 2 years ago about the House Museum. And when after the recording is posted on YouTube. I'll send an email to everyone about where it is, but I'd like to have more information in that email, like how to contact you or how to come to the museum, etc. So you and I can discuss that later, and we'll put the information into the email so people will be able, and maybe people may be induced to come to Quito. I'd love to come to Quito. I've never been there, of course. So I thank you very much. It was a wonderful presentation. And thank you, Mindy, for great questions, and Lucy for introducing us all to this world of art and Holocaust remembrance, basically. We don't have any classes scheduled for the next few months. We're working on right now classes for late summer, early fall, around Rosh Hashanah. We're going to have a few classes we've already organized about women cantors and an interesting topic about open sitters. You'll see an email about that, people who are coming to the class now. We might have another class in the summer, but right now we have nothing else scheduled. We will, of course, continue sending emails out when we have something scheduled. So again, thank you very much, Gaby, and good luck with your traveling.
So sorry, can I just answer a short
Sure.
question I spotted in the chat about Olga Fish? She was Jewish as well. She met my grandmother's brother, because they were doing the same job. They were collecting handicrafts from indigenous people in Ecuador. So yes, she was Jewish.
I can't not ask this question, and then we'll really bring this to an end. What about people from Germany seeing what you've collected and the continuum over time and the Nazi art? Have you had responses from people in Germany or art critics or art programs? Has there been any collection and collaboration or critique from Germany?
Yes, well, in fact, we have had very good reception from Germany. I think many people are now in Germany, like trying to um, uh, reconcile with their past, so they're interested in these kind of things. I know some libraries in Germany have my grandmother's book, through the Soika's book, but otherwise, yeah. German visitors have come here. In fact, we had a relationship with the German embassy in Ecuador, and they helped us. They participated in some of our events. They were very open. They even wanted to help us financially. It hasn't been the case yet, but just they wanted to. So yeah, I think it's a good relation. Now, of course, I know there are also anti-Semitic movements still, and new movements in Germany, but fortunately we haven't heard anything from them.
Okay, one final word from you, and then we'll have people listen to the recording. And oh yes, if people want to get in touch with you directly, maybe we'll post that. Is that okay with you?
Yes, of course. And of course, you're all invited to come to the museum if you ever come to Ecuador. It's a beautiful country as well, with lots of beautiful nature. We have a Jewish community here. So yes, you can always come here. Of course, I will put my email in the chat if you want to contact me, if you have additional questions, or if you want to say anything. I'm open. I'm very open. And I'm very sorry if I had some English problems. It's not my native language. I'm just, excuse me if anything was not understandable. But yeah, thank you very, very much for everything. So yes, I will put my contacts in the chat.
We will also put it in an email that people will get. So, and also it'll be in the recording, basically. I'll explain it to you later. Okay, so I think we're going to end this now. And I thank everyone for coming. And I especially thank Gaby for a wonderful presentation and beautiful art that she's showing. And hope, well,
Bravo, Gaby.
we hope for peace. I mean, my signature always say to peace, the shalom, and we certainly hope that there's peace coming to all of us. Okay, I think I'll end this now.
Hasta luego.
Thank you very much, all of you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.